No, first of all, I'd like to thank the Senator for his kind remarks and also thank him for postponing this debate so I could be here to take it. I absolutely agree with them that one of the most important things that we can invest in is the quality of leadership in our schools. I think if you're looking at what influences a child's success in school, one is the teacher that they experience, and two is the quality of the leadership of the school. And I'm very keen to invest in upskilling and upgrading leadership. And I've done a number of things already. As you know, in the last two budgets, I made provision for 3,000 additional posts of responsibility within our schools, both primary and post-primary. At post-primary, it was deputy principal positions, 475 of them. At primary and post-primary, it was 1,300 assistant principal posts that I've sanctioned. The other very significant improvement, I believe, is the new circular on management that has been negotiated with the trade unions and now circulated. And it provides for a much more flexible, distributed system of management within our schools and allows for more flexible allocating of responsibilities, a more open system for identifying and reporting on what's done under that, and the possibility for changing those responsibilities. So I think that's a real breakthrough in the way we allocate posts. Now, I know your particular concern is with small schools where there is a teaching principal. And as I've outlined there, this year I did make an arrangement to increase the number of days that such a principal has off by 2, 3 and 4 days respectively in each of the size categories. So I've added extra days, as is outlined there in the reply, so that they've gone from 15, 20 or 25 days to 17, 23 or 29 days. And again, it reflects the need to provide more resources and more capacity within the leadership. I'm very keen to see more initiative devolved down to local level. And for example, the new model of resource teaching allocation, which I think we discussed here last week, it puts much more trust in the local school to allocate how the teaching resource is deployed across the range of children with special needs, moves away from a very inflexible system that was there in place. Another thing that I've done for the small schools this year is that I've agreed that there will be 50 cluster posts where a group of principals who would have release days could combine them and employ a permanent position who would obviously fill in the different schools. So they wouldn't have the hassle of trying to get substitutes on the days that they wanted to take release, so that they would be able to much better plan their allocation of time. And the final thing I'll mention, and it is worth mentioning, is that we are very significantly now investing in the Centre for School Leadership, designed specifically to give, and this year we will give 1,000 principals, so that's 1,000 out of 4,000, opportunities to either have coaching, mentoring or to pursue postgraduate study. So we are really putting money into enhancing the quantity and quality of leadership time. And I think, I know the Senator is making a specific ask, which I gather from the text here would cost 12 million if we were to accede to the specific ask that you have. And obviously, in a budgetary context, when I come, in October to put these things together, we'll have to look at these competing asks. There are many others, as you probably know, because we've debated them up and down here in this House and in the other. So I suppose it will come to, we'll have to make decisions as to where the priorities lie. It will be, as we've seen, going to be a fairly tight year in terms of additional resources. But the one thing I can say is that, we will not relent in our interest in investing in the quantity and quality of leadership. And I think, the sort of things like the Centre for School Leadership, like building clusters where schools can come together, not only this cluster for substitutions, but clusters to do things together, be it digital, be it DESH, and I know there's, a lot of border counties, a lot of DESH schools around the border counties, not maybe in Monaghan, but certainly in Donegal, a lot of border. We are trying to encourage more leadership by individual school leaders working with others to achieve new things. And I think it's moving away from a much more rigid input-output way of allocating resources across our school budgeting. Like the conversation, in my view, is far too much about pupil-teacher ratio, capitation, appointment rates. We really need to look at what pushes on the experience of children, and I think that's where good and well thought out investment in leadership can make a big difference, and that's what we are trying to sponsor. So I'd like to thank the Senator for his interest. I know I can't accede to his very specific request today, but I will certainly examine it in the context of other things we might be able to do in this whole area. Thank you, Minister.
Yeah, just very briefly, Minister, thank you very much for your comprehensive report, even though maybe some of the content wasn't to my liking. But I would just like, maybe, Minister, for you to acknowledge the fact that there is an issue, and the school principals, as you know, have a campaign ongoing at the moment. I am aware myself, from my own experience, where school principals are leaving their post to return to mainstream teaching, and I'm sure you're aware of that as well. There's a reason for that, and the reason is that the workload has got to a point whereby, as I said earlier in my contribution, it's affecting their well-being. I think it's an issue that deserves attention. I welcome the fact that you're not closing the door to consulting with the stakeholders involved, and hopefully maybe make a genuine attempt to find a resolution or a path forward that would address this particular issue.
Thank you, Minister. Yeah, I think, like everything, we will have to just weigh up its impact on outcomes, and I'm absolutely focused on outcomes. If children do better out of this, those are the things that I want to do. The request is fairly substantial. As I said in my reply, I granted this year 2 to 4 days extra. The request is from 7 to 19 days extra, so it is quite a step up on what we've been able to do. And I think, with such a step up, we have to look at the impact of 12 million spent in this way against 12 million spent in many of the other areas where we're getting, similarly passionate demands for investment. But if we can, I think the ultimate arbiter has to be, if children do better. That's probably our best way of trying to. I know it's an inexact science; you have to make choices. But I will look at each of these things against that sort of objective.